Alright, hi guys. So in today's video, I just want to talk to you a little bit about Monstera Deliciosa plants. I'm hoping to make it through this video somewhat sane. I'm going to open this at the end and hopefully it'll be good. We'll see. I don't know. Anyway, these are my two Monstera Deliciosa plants. I have talked about them a little bit in a couple other videos, but I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail. This is kind of one of the plants that I first sought out. I think I've mentioned before. It's one of the first ones that I ordered online, and it's one of the first ones that I thought I would kill immediately that is still doing pretty well. So these two, when I ordered them, came together. I've planted them in some cactus mix with perlite. This guy used to be in a smaller pot, but I ended up moving him to a bigger pot because at one point I picked it up to do, I don't know what I was doing, but I picked it up and I noticed there was a root coming out of the bottom. So I fixed that. And since I got him, he's got a few new leaves. None of them are splitting yet, but I'm not too worried about that. I've read that it can take a little while, being right now it's like it's November now. And so I can't imagine that they're going to be doing a lot of growing here in the next couple months. But in the spring and the summer, as I get him back in a spot where it's really warm and really bright, I think those splits might start to emerge now that he's a little bit older. Kind of the care tips I have for these guys are to keep them in pretty bright indirect light. The best way I know to describe it and to think of it is find a room in your house where it stays plenty bright enough throughout the day that you could like read a book or whatever with no problem. You do not need to turn on an extra light to brighten it up at all. But you don't want to put it in a spot where like a cat might lay in a sunbeam, because that would be too hot and it would burn the leaves. So these guys have stayed pretty happy with that kind of light. They also, I'm struggling so much to not just do this right now. So my way of doing it, I guess, is to kind of stick my finger down the side of the pot, and if it comes out very dry, then I know it's good to water. I do notice these guys, whenever they get kind of overwatered, not overwatered, but when they have plenty of water, you'll see little beads of water form up on the leaves. So if you're seeing that, you 100% should not be watering it then. It's a little interesting right now, being in the winter time. We have our heat on, so the house is really dry. Like I've always read that you're supposed to water things less in the winter, but the air dries everything out so much faster that I feel like I'm actually watering things more to keep it at the same level of moisture, even a little below, because it's so dry. And I know they're not really growing as much right now, so they need less moisture. The other thing that I wanted to mention that I think is kind of interesting is something that's pretty new to me, that I'm pretty sure these guys, they're the same thing, are actually Monstera Borsigiana, something like that. And that means that it's very similar to the Monstera Deliciosa, but not exactly. So the Monstera, like true Monstera Deliciosa, will get really giant leaves that have a ton of splits and the little holes that are close to the center of the leaf. And this guy doesn't quite get that much of a split to it, which honestly I'm pretty okay with. Some of the ways you can tell the difference are the way that it grows. This one, since he's already getting this little aerial root at the bottom, the Monstera Borsigiana, they tend to vine a lot. And so they'll be the ones that you see that are kind of, they just look kind of helter-skelter, if that makes any sense. Whenever you see them and they're not in a very full pot, you'll see a lot of kind of zigzagging around under one leaf that's just going up. That almost makes sense. But you can kind of see here the way the leaves are kind of branching off one another. And I think a lot more of these aerial roots will form to where here, probably in the spring, I'll start looking for a moss totem for this guy, and he will attach to that like nothing else. And while the Monstera Deliciosa is still a vining plant, I don't think they vine as quickly as this guy. I'm also pretty sure this guy is a faster grower. I could have that backwards, but I'm pretty sure that is what I read. And another way you can tell the difference, Granted, this is still a pretty immature plant. It's still pretty much a little baby. But in a mature Monstera Deliciosa, there will be like ruffles kind of right here, like right at the back of the leaf. Even if this was a true Monstera Deliciosa, it would not have that right now because it is so young. But I definitely think that's what this is. So that is interesting. Is there anything else I need to mention? I'm just so anxious to open this box. This is a plant that I ordered from Etsy. I ordered it from a store in England. Obviously, I'm not in England, if you can't tell by my everything about me. Sadly, I can't claim that provenance. It started to ship once and kind of puttered around, like I was trying to follow the tracking information and nothing happened for almost 2 weeks, and I finally wrote to the seller on Etsy because basically it was saying that it had been delivered to me when it had not. And it was really nice because whenever I got a hold of the seller, he had already been looking into it, so he had it figured out. He sent me a different plant. But as you can see, this box is a little bit squished. It's been through a lot. So we're gonna see what kind of state this guy is in. Okay. Okay, so my little plant from England. Oh, it's kind of a wilty leaf. Oh my god. Okay. English newspaper. That's fun and exciting. Oh my goodness. Okay. Ooh, it's kind of been up. That's a big leaf. Even these guys don't have leaves this big. Ooh. Oh, that's all kind of been up. Oh, I hope he does okay. Oh, he's got a little baby leaf coming out. Okay. So I did order this from a gentleman who owns a nursery. So there was that extra level of trust. So if you can't tell by my general reaction and the leaves on this guy, this should be a Thai constellation Monstera Deliciosa. Ah! Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm like shaking. Ooh. It looks like there's a bit of root rot going on. Oh, I hope this guy does okay. So this guy is from a cutting. I can see the cutting at the bottom, but he does have some pretty good roots coming your way. Here are the leaves on this guy. He's got some really pretty variegation. His leaves are an interesting shape compared to the, this is the one that's kind of ripped, the Monstera that I have. And like I said, he has a little baby leaf coming out already. So these are the roots we're dealing with right now. They don't look super happy. So that's rotted for sure. That's pretty rotted. I'm not 100% sure what to do about that. I'm really torn right now as to whether I should plant it. Like all the black that you can see, like this root here is okay down to about this point, and this one is pretty mushy all the way up. Like about here it starts to feel okay where there's this new root coming off. I feel like it's worth mentioning, again, these did get here from England. The other few plants I've ordered online have been much closer. And they've only been in the mail for like a day, a couple days. And so that's an important factor here, I feel. All things considered, there was a large part of me fully expecting that by the time I got this plant, it would just be like wilted lettuce, rotted in the bottom of the box. So all things considered, this is halfway decent. Okay, so I went ahead and rinsed this guy off, rinsed the roots off just a little bit. That is one thing I'll note that I think is kind of an interesting difference between this guy and these guys just so far. And it could be that this was taken from a cutting from a more mature plant. That's very possible. But it feels a lot more woody. The roots are a little stiffer, and some of the pieces that have broken off here are a lot more fibrous. So that is my Monstera Deliciosa variegata baby. Hopefully, there's a part of me that's just always afraid I'm being duped no matter what at all times. Let's get into that story. So I looked on Etsy and I happened to notice it actually had been listed like the day I started looking. There was a pre-sale for these little Monstera Deliciosa variegata babies, and I was a bit nervous because it's Etsy. It was a brand new store. It had no previous sales, not a lot of information, but it was linked to a nursery over in England. So new store, not a lot of information, and out of the country. So first I sent the seller a message on Etsy just to, I had a question, like, is this pre-sale for like the spring? Is it for a week, a month? Like, what timeline are we talking about here? And the answer was, prompt and polite, and so I felt better about that. But then I also sent the nursery an email just asking, like, I found this store on Etsy. Is this really you guys? Because, it was just a link. Like, anyone could have found a store and just copied the link. So they, again, verified, like, yep, this was me. So I felt better. My husband said that was rude. I don't know. But I would much rather find out than just give them my money and hope. And then probably a month and a half after I put the initial pre-sale thingy through, they said they were ready to send out these. So I put in my final payment. I mentioned the shipping headache. But yeah, so I'm having my little, it was so cheap moment right now, because since I did the pre-sale thing, I got this guy for about half the price that the same shop is currently selling them for. But here's just hoping that I can keep this baby alive. I'm excited to see how these guys go through the winter. I'm excited to see how this guy does. Yeah. So I did end up changing my mind, actually, about keeping this guy in the water. Just the more I read about potential root rot and all that. So I dipped him in some rooting hormone that had some antifungal stuff in it, and that should help kind of ward off any problems. And I've potted him in some, as usual, cactus mix and perlite. So yeah, I do think it helped for him to sit in the water for a couple hours after I took him out of the box, though, just because it it just made it easier to get the soil off of the roots. So yeah, that's my guy. Here's hoping it all works out.